All right, here are 3 ways to deal with negative emotions. And these 3 ways that we'll talk about, they're not ways to eliminate negative emotions. They're ways to become at peace with them. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. And by the way, my name is Luke, and this is my channel, Headfulness. This is the channel where I help people to get out of their heads. I help people to overcome anxiety, to become more mindful. And I also help people to increase their stress resilience, so they can achieve more in their professional careers and just stay calm and relaxed, even in stressful situations. So if any of that resonates with you and you think it'll help you achieve your goals, make sure to click the subscribe button and the notification bell so you get notified of all of my anxiety relief, mindfulness, and stress resilience tips. All right, so what are the 3 ways to deal with negative emotions? Well, the first way is to be present with how you're feeling right now. And so ask yourself the question, what am I feeling right now? What am I feeling right now? And just be present with that feeling. You know, don't try to think about the history of the feeling. Don't think about why you're feeling that way. You know, don't necessarily try to justify the feeling. Just be present with what you are feeling right now. And just take a second to really identify, what am I feeling right now? And then you can start to explore the feeling. You know, start to think, how does it feel? Like, how does it feel to have this feeling? What does it feel like? And then you can even ask weird questions like, what temperature does it feel like? You know, what color does it feel like? Where do I feel it in the body? You know, do I feel it in my stomach? Do I feel it in my chest? Am I feeling it in my hands? And just be present with what you're feeling right now. And what's interesting is, as you take this time to just be present with the feeling and not be caught up in the thoughts that are associated with it, you may start to realize that there's a feeling behind the feeling. You know, there was a time not too long ago I was feeling really annoyed about some interaction that I had. And, you know, I was just kind of going off in my head about how annoyed I was and how wrong the other person was. And then I was like, well, let's just take a second, just be present with what I'm feeling. And as I was present with this feeling, that started off as, you know, I was feeling annoyed. So I was like, well, what am I feeling right now? I was like, well, I'm feeling annoyed. And as I just was present with this feeling, I realized, oh, you know, it's not that I'm feeling annoyed, it's just that I'm feeling inadequate. And whatever that interaction was, it just really pushed on that soft spot of not feeling good enough. And then I spent some time being present with that, and it was like, oh, you know, it's not necessarily that I feel inadequate, it's just that I feel a little lost right now. You know, I'm not sure where I want to go in life. And so I was present with that. And you can kind of go through this process of just being present with what you're feeling. And I think an important aspect to this is try not to only be present with your feelings when you're feeling bad. When you're feeling great, when you have a win, when you're feeling really good in life, be present with those feelings as well. So that's the first way to deal with negative emotions, is to be present with your feelings. The second way to deal with negative emotions is to ask yourself a very specific question. And this question is, what am I happy about in my life? And this question is really interesting because it assumes that there are things that you're happy about in your life, right? What am I happy about in my life? And then when you ask this question, your brain goes to work on finding the answer, because your brain's this problem-solving machine. And when you ask it a question, it's going to find an answer. And so let's say that you asked the question a different way and you said, is there anything that I'm happy about in my life? Well, your brain's going to probably go to the easiest answer. It's going to say no, like I couldn't find anything. Sorry, I tried, but nothing there. But if you ask the question this other way, of what am I happy about in my life, it's really amazing what will happen. You know, you may not get an instant response, but if you just focus on this question for 2, 3, 4 minutes, things are going to start to kind of pop into the foreground of your thought. And you'll be like, oh yeah, that is something that I'm happy about. Wow, I totally forgot about that. Or there's even things that maybe you had thought about before and you kind of saw them in a negative light. But after asking this specific question, all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's actually something that I'm happy about. And one example of this for me was I was looking at my YouTube analytics, and I was looking at, you can see like the revenue from the ads that are running on these videos. And I remember one day I was looking at it and it was making, made like $1.50 in a day, like less than $2. And I remember looking at it, I was like, man, I can't believe this. Like I've uploaded, I don't know, so many videos, over 100 YouTube videos, and here I am making less than $2 a day. And I was just like, I remember I was looking at it so negatively, and then the other day I did this thing of asking, what am I happy about in my life right now? And the funniest thing is that came to mind of like, wow, how amazing. Like I'm making $2 a day just off the ads that are running on my YouTube video. That's so amazing. And it wasn't like I fished around in my head and and convinced myself that I was happy about that. I literally asked the question, what am I happy about in my life? And maybe 30 seconds or a minute later, that kind of just popped into my head. And I was able to see it in a totally different light. Now, one tip I have for you to really get more out of this, when you ask this question of what am I happy about in my life, don't try to fish around in your head for things that you're happy about. Instead, try to focus on generating a feeling of gratitude or appreciation. Because when you try to fish around in your head for things that you're happy about, you're kind of forcing the process. But if you just ask the question, what am I happy about in my life right now? And you just focus on the feeling of gratitude or appreciation and just flooding yourself with those positive emotions, your brain's going to be working in the background and the specifics will pop up on their own. So that's the second way to deal with negative emotions, is to ask yourself the question, what am I happy about in my life right now? And then focus on generating a positive feeling of gratitude or appreciation, and just let your brain do the work in the background to figure out the specifics. So those are the first two so far. There's be present with your emotions, and then there's ask yourself the question, what am I happy about in my life right now? All right, now for the third way to deal with negative emotions. And this is to talk about how you're feeling with a therapist or a counselor, to actually express what you're feeling to another person. Now, you can talk about your feelings with, a spouse or a friend or a family member, but at the same time, it can be a lot of burden to put on someone to kind of dump all your problems and to dump all your negative emotions on somebody. And so what I like to do instead is to schedule an appointment with my therapist. And the reason I like that better is because you're basically paying a person to let you talk about your feelings for an entire hour. And so that's what they're there for. They're there specifically to listen to you talk about your problems. And then the other great thing about talking to a therapist is if you've got a good therapist, they're going to have valuable advice to give you. With the guy I see, there's times I'll tell him something and he'll be like, I've got 10 other patients who are dealing with this exact same thing. And here's the advice that I gave them, and here's the results they got when they took that advice. And so the advice you get from a therapist, not to say that your friends and family have bad advice, but when you talk to a therapist, you're talking to a person who does this for a living. And they literally are going to say things, you'll hear them say things like, I've got 5 other patients going through this exact same thing. I've got 20 other patients going through this exact same thing. And there's something a little nice about hearing that, to realize, oh, okay, I'm not alone in this. Like, this is something everyone's going through. But to also get that valuable and that professional advice on how to deal with it. So that's the third piece of advice I have, is to talk about your feelings with a therapist. And so I've got a video that's coming out in just a few days called How to Find a Therapist. And maybe by the time you're watching this, the video is actually already uploaded. So if it is, I'll put a link down in the description to the next video. And in that video, I'll tell you how to find a therapist in real life, an in-person one-on-one therapist. And I'll also show you a way to find a therapist online. And these are 2 things that I've done in my own life, and I've found benefit out of doing both. So that video is coming out in just a few days. Maybe it's already uploaded by the time you're watching this. Now, if you found this video helpful, I got 3 things that I need you to do. Number 1 is click the subscribe button. And when you click that, a little notification bell should pop up. And if you click that, you'll get notified whenever I release videos on anxiety relief, mindfulness, or stress resilience. Number 2 is if you know anyone who this video might help, feel free to share it with them. You can share it with a specific person, or you can even share it on Twitter or YouTube or Facebook or wherever you want. And then number 3, if you've got your own ways of dealing with negative emotions that I didn't talk about in this video and you think may help other people, leave a comment down below and share the way that you deal with negative emotions. I'm sure it's going to help other people. So other than that, thank you so much for watching. Again, that next video, I'll put a link to it down below once it's uploaded. It'll be called How to Find a Therapist. And thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.